Okay, so this video we're going to look at what's called algebraic notation, which sounds terribly complicated, but it isn't really. In fact, it's a lot simpler than the really old-fashioned way of writing down chess moves. And once you can do this and you know instinctively what each square is called, it'll help you to read chess books. It'll help you understand when I'm making some more complicated comments on some of the later presentations. And it'll help you just to analyze your own games. So you'll just sort of know that each square has its own name. So let's go through this quickly. So it's very, very, very straightforward. If you set the board up correctly, you should find that the white rooks are on A1 and H1. And so all you'll need to do is put the initial, so a letter of the piece being moved and the square that it's going to. So if you see KE3, it would tell you that a king is being moved to the square E3. So if we were going to move the black king as shown by that arrow, what would you write? And you'd write KC6, king to C6. The three dots you'll often see in a chess book, and what that tells you is that it's a black move next. So a diagram might be black to play, what does he do? And the three little dots just tell you that it's a black move next. So there's a bit of an exception, first of all with the pawn. We just don't bother putting the P. What happens is you just write the square that the pawn is going to. Sometimes you'll find when you capture with a pawn, it'll be the file that it comes from. So we'll see some examples of that. And the other thing that we traditionally do is use N for a knight, because we can't really use K because we've already used that for the king. So although it means making a spelling mistake, we tend to put N for knight. So let's see some examples. So the arrow has shown the white pawn moving from D2 to D4 on the board. And what we're going to do is put D4. That's what it will show you in a book. It will just say D4 and everyone would know that it must be a pawn, and that's fine. If you really want to write PD4, you can, but the books just don't have the P. Here we can see now the white pawn is captured on F5, and you'll normally see in a book it will say G takes F5. So what it's telling you is a pawn on the G file has taken a piece on F5. Some really shorthand it and just put GF, so you can kind of have to work out what it is. But G takes F5, and the X is what's used for indicating a capture. Okay, the next arrow shows you the black pawn on C5 capturing the white pawn on B4. And so I wonder if you can work out what you should write. Hopefully you'd have written or said CB4 or C takes B4 or possibly CB, but you get the idea. So C takes B4, CX B4. It's a slightly more complicated position. We've got lots of pieces on the board. So how would we write down each move as it appears? So the first thing there, we've got the purple arrow. What would we write for that one? Absolutely. So dots and QB5, queen to B5. And now we can see the red arrow for that rook move. And R takes RX D7. So R for rook takes D7. The blue arrow that's just appeared for the bishop. Capital B for the bishop, and then a small b for the square, and that indicates bishop to B3. Slightly darker red arrow for the white knight there. Now this one's a little more tricky. So hopefully you've got ND1, but because the other knight could also have gone to D1, we just put in the extra F, because that then tells us which knight it is. So knight NFD1 is just telling me that it's the knight from the F file that's doing the moving. If it said NBD1, it would mean it was the knight that was on B2. So you just have to put that so that whoever's reading your notes knows which knight's moving. And usually in a book, you'll see a number 2, and that just tells us which move in a sequence or a game we're at. So you can see there 1, rook takes D7, queen B5, knight FD1, bishop B3 might be a move order. And it tends to be that white's on the left, black's on the right of those lists when you see them in books. So there's lots of other symbols you'll come across too in chess books, chess annotation. Here's the most common ones. So that looks like a 0-0 draw in football, but not quite. That's telling you that somebody has castled kingside. So that's where white is moving his king to g1 from e1, or for the black king to g8 from e8. Please look at the presentation on castling if you're not sure. And 3 zeros is telling us that it's castle's queen side. So that's where the white king is going from e1 to c1 and the black king from e8 to c8. Exclamation mark or 2 exclamation marks is telling us that it's a good move or a brilliant move. Question mark or 2 question marks means it's probably a mistake or a blunder. Depending on the number of question marks and exclamation marks will tell you how good or bad the move is. If you don't see anything, you can just assume that the move's okay. There's nothing special about it and nothing wrong with it. It's just an okay move. These combinations tell you that a move is interesting or unusual. And so whoever's doing the annotating doesn't really know if it's good or bad, but it's a bit strange in some way. So it might be really, really risky or just a new move that nobody's seen before. A plus symbol tells you that something's happened that gives a check. So QB8 plus means a queen has gone to the square B8 and is now checking the enemy king. You'll sometimes see equals Q, and what that tells you is that a pawn has promoted and it's chosen to become a queen. So if you see equals N, it's one of those rare occasions where a pawn has reached the other side of the board and chooses to be a knight. If you see EP after a pawn capture, it means it's an en passant. And again, if you're not sure what en passant is, do have a look at the presentation on en passant. So white always comes first in a game of chess, always moves first. So set up a board and see if you can follow what's happening in this game. So first of all, white plays e4. Black responds with e5. White's next move is bishop c4. Black's next move is knight c6. White plays queen to f3. Black plays d6, which ought to really have 2 question marks after it. Actually, it ought to have more than 2 question marks after it, because white's 4th move is then queen takes f7. Now, have you got the position that is just about to appear? And hopefully you've worked out that's the 4-move checkmate. Not good. Black is in trouble. He is in checkmate. His king is attacked, but oops, come back. His king is attacked by the white queen, and he can't escape to d7 or e7 because she's attacking those squares too, and he can't take the queen because the bishop is protecting her, and you can't put your king into check. So that's actually a checkmate. So let's see a slightly less one-sided typical game of chess. So on each slide, just try to play the moves on your board and then check to see that you've got everything right. So we've got d4, d5, then white plays c4, black e6, knight to c3, knight to f6, bishop to g5, bishop to e7. White now plays knight to f3, castles kingside for black, e3 for white, b6 for black, bishop to d3 for white, bishop to b7 for black. And with a bit of luck, you should have a position that looks like that. And just for interest's sake, this is a position from the Queen's Gambit opening. So d4, d5, c4, e6 is traditionally known as the Queen's Gambit. And the black defense is known as the Tartakowa defense, just because it was played a lot in the early 1900s by a guy called Savei Tartakowa, a grandmaster. Anyway, the names don't matter. So did you get the right position? Hopefully you did. If not, press pause and just have another go at playing the moves and see if you can make it work. Let's move on in the meantime. So we'll play a few moves a bit randomly and see if we can see some different notation. So they may not be the best moves, but it's just to see where we're going. So white's 8th move, c takes d5. Knight takes d5 for black. Bishop takes e7 for white. Queen takes e7 for black. Knight takes d5 for white. Bishop takes d5 for black. e4 for white. Bishop b7 for black. White castles kingside. Black plays c5. White plays d takes c5. Black plays b takes c5. White plays rook c1. And we've just got dots, so that's telling us that black is to move. Did you get the following position? Have a little look at that. Hit pause for a few seconds if you want to just check and see what you've got. Okay, so well done if you got that position. So let's just play a few more moves and see where we go with it. So it's a black move next, which again, the dots is telling you, yeah, there's no white move, so it's black to play. And black plays knight to c6. White plays a3. Black now plays rook f to d8. Queen c2 for white. Rook a to c8 for black. Queen to e2 for white. Knight d4 for black. Knight takes d4 for white. C takes d4 for black. f4 for white. Rook takes c1 for black. Rook takes f1 for white. e5 for black. And hopefully somebody's spotted there's actually a slight mistake in there, isn't there? Because that 20th move for white should, of course, say rook takes c1. So I've made a little bit of a typo in the PowerPoint there. I'll have to change that in a minute. And black's last move was e5. So with a little bit of luck, you've got the position as shown, even allowing for my slight mistake. Okay. So that's how to record the chess moves. So when you're playing now, having a game of chess, try to get hold of a bit of paper and just scribble some columns of white and black moves as you've just seen them on the slides, and just record each move as you play them, so that when the game's finished, you should be able to play back over the game. What will happen in a tournament, both players will write their moves down. So if you have a discussion or a dispute, or you think somebody's messed up or cheated or made a mistake, you can check back and see who's right and who's wrong. But it really helps you to look back over your games and sort of work out where you made mistakes, where you played good moves, and so on and so on. So that's it for today. I am going to go and just quickly edit that typo on the PowerPoint because, oops, but we all make mistakes. Enjoy your chess.